All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the PGA show here on the SHIPIT Nation YouTube station. We got the first look as usual. Got a special guest today, bringing my guy Alex Blickel from FTN back here with me. I'll bring him in here in a minute, but lots to talk about today, lots to get to. A little bit somber off the top. We'll get into the good stuff. We'll break it all down. It's the Canadian Open. I'm excited. I'll hit on some of the chat I see later. There's a little funny story in there. Actually, I had a couple people reach out today. I'll talk more on that in a minute, but before we get into it, I want to say a happy Memorial Day to everybody out there. Thank you to all those who serve, who have served, who support someone who does that. Alex, I'll bring you in, man. Memorial Day here, and then we'll get into some stuff and break it all down this week for the RBC Canadian Open. How you doing, my friend?
Doing very well. Yeah, happy Memorial Day to everybody. I will say, I think the tribute during the round yesterday, the helicopters flying over Memorial Day and having that like dual meaning with the moment of silence for Grayson, that was a pretty beautiful moment.
Yeah, definitely love to see that. A lot of great emotion poured out from a lot of the golfers out there. Our guy Rin has it up there. We'd be remiss if we didn't just talk about this quickly off top. I know you have a personal story you can share, and we'll talk on that in a second. But just want to say, I did post it out there yesterday. Obviously, very sad news in the golf world this week. People playing DFS golf and betting golf and whatever know a lot more about Grayson Murray than the general public. But one thing I will say, just, and then I'll kick it to you on it, just the setup of super sad. Everyone knows this, some of his history, the backstory, all of that. But I think one thing gets said a lot, myself included even said it, and it's true and meaningful and everything. But I think there's a part that's missing. So I did want to touch on that just off the top, just because, so you never know what's going on with somebody out there. And in this case, people had a bit of a clue. Obviously, Grayson had mentioned things in the past with mental health, but I do just want to say, as obvious as that is, whether it's a loved one, a friend, somebody close, myself, whoever, reach out to anyone. It's, a good friend said this, it's not okay to not be okay. So reach out if you need somebody. But I will say that the second part to that is that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, is that you never know when something can change on a dime. Like in this economy, in this world, someone can lose a loved one, have a relationship go awry, lose a job, debts, finances, things can pile up in a hurry, and that can come out of nowhere. So it's not just someone you're not sure of what they're going through and how it's going. Somebody that you think is fine and seems fine and has always been fine can also change on a dime. So always be kind to one another, reach out to people as you can, always say good things, and just be there and support people, man. Be a good person. That's something you can control. Alex, I'll kick it over to you. Any thoughts you have on it, man? And just, I know you've mentioned you played with Grayson before, so let you talk on it for a minute, man, before we get into the show.
Yeah, to be honest, I was thinking about whether we wanted to even cover anything with Grayson on the Pro V Pro show. And then I saw how much our subscribers over at FTN in the PGA chat just seem to benefit from talking through this. Like, nobody knows how to process this kind of thing, right? And so once I saw that, it's like, okay, yeah, we're definitely going to cover it. Justin actually knew Grayson pretty well. I didn't know him. I played in events with him. I will say, I want to save most of the stories for the Pro V Pro show, but what I will say is my memories of Grayson will not be what I saw on TV. It'll be the first time I saw him warming up on the range. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know, wow, that's Grayson Murray. He's going to be on tour in 10 years. I just knew, who is this dude striping these long irons, just dead straight, towering ball flight, making a different sound than everybody else. It was like my second or third event as the pro at the time, so it was pretty intimidating to see. And then in the last US Open sectional qualifier that I played, Grayson Murray was the medalist, and so it kind of felt full circle for me. Seeing him at the top of that leaderboard that I was actually playing in was really cool, because he was the guy that I saw 8 years ago or whatever warming up, and just thought, like, that dude seems a lot better than I am. I don't know what to do with this information. But then also, like, being able to see him win this year was really cool as well. So, man, it's tragic, but if there is a silver lining, at least he was able to turn his life around in the last few years the way he had, and he made like an enormous positive impact on people in the last few years. So at the very least, he was able to do that.
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers out with Grayson Murray. Obviously wanted to cover that just a little bit off the top. Like I said, a lot of people in our golf world talking about it, but I think, pros, people that are close to him, Peter Malnati's story and the tears that he shed about it, playing that last round with him after he withdrew, after I believe he missed like a 4-foot and a 6-footer, got himself out of contention on the cut line, skipped the last 2 holes. Malnati had apparently told people, keep an eye on him. Just, can you go check on him? And then sure enough, he ends up taking his own life. So like I said, tragic situation. Many have spoke on it, but move on to this week. Just wanted to say that, and obviously thoughts out with him, his family. But back to the golf for this week. We've got the RBC Canadian Open. Had a pretty big week over at SHIPIT Nation. Was a lot of fun there. But I want to hit on this one first because everybody asked me, and they're talking about the Tambo Open this week. It's like if somebody lives in Boston and there's a tournament this week in Kentucky, and people are like, hey, you going to the tournament? Man, it's your turn. It's in the USA. It's like, yes, it's the Canadian Open. Check out a map, people. Like, it's a big country. So it's not, I will not be at the event this week. It's a 2.5-hour flight and then a, probably hour-and-a-half drive or something to get to it. So I will not be there, but still excited for it. We obviously love this event. The last couple of years have actually been overshadowed a little bit, right? We had the launch of Live. We had the PIF agreement deal thing last year where they were talking about that. So the last couple of years, there's been these big meetings and sort of things taking away from this event. So certainly excited for it this year. Most excited because also great day for me, Alex, great day for members over at SHIPIT Nation. But, I've been trying so hard to get back into this thing. This is just part of that grind that goes with anything like this in life. But shout out to our guy, Lee Aldrich. He said, this is just a quick note from our Discord. He came out on Monday and said, good day all. You won't notice this much, but basically I'll just get through it quickly. He said, I'm evolving the course fit rankings to make them stronger and more accurate, thinking of adding some new ingredients. We always joke about it's the secret sauce and the, Colonel Sanders with his special spices. And so he says, this week I've stumbled upon what I believe to be the best improvement yet. I'm very excited to see how this new herb improves the secret sauce. And I actually went back to him in the chat and said, I love that you're doing this. I'm a little interested, but the thing's been dialed in already. You guys have GPP scores over at FTN. This has kind of been our sort of thing that way over at SHIPIT Nation. I said, we'll see how it goes. Well, sure enough, it was all my best course fit lineups that ended up taking down these tickets. I ended up getting 3, almost 5. I bubbled the 5th seat. I came in 6th in the top 5, got a seat. I came in 3rd as well. So I got one in that one. And then in another one, I came 2nd where it was winner take all. So almost 5, but I will be happy with 3. Built this lineup pretty much right off those course fit rankings. Davis Riley, of course, number 1. He's had Akshay Bhatia, number 1 for his win. He had Taylor Pendrith, number 2 for his win throughout the swing season. There was a bunch of events where we had it. So, just a great week. Lots of members came out and got the job done too. Lots of winning tickets. I seen $18 into $6,300 on a Riley ticket. I'm sure you guys saw lots as well. How was your week, man? What was your thoughts on the event? And then we'll hop in and start discussing RBC Canadian Open.
Yeah, it's funny. We have so many like overlapping subscribers now who are both at SHIPIT and FTN. So we were actually talking about that Riley call from Lee. That was pretty cool on his part. We had a lot of success this week as well. Shout out to one of our subscribers, Hamhawk. He got himself a Fantasy Golf World Championship seat as well. I had a big round 4, made about $4,000. Won a ticket for I think a best ball contest. So my NFL best ball season apparently is underway now just because of round 4 showdown. But yeah, it's been an awesome season. We're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, saw the crossover logos too. We love to see that. We got a lot of crossover. We have a partnership as well. So just awesome to be with you guys and just see some of that member crossover. I got to say this. We always shout out the first guy in to the chat, first guy or girl. We're trying to up the, what's the joke around there with LOLs, the female viewership. We're trying to get that up. But shout out to Jordan, first in today with the triple rocket ship Express. I will say this, speaking of first in, he actually won the first FGWC seat of the season. He won it in the $5 to kick off the year. So he's got to be excited. He's waited all season to get to this point. I had to wait till the last minute to get mine and others. And shout out to Hamhawk. Like you said, I actually got to meet him. It was a 3rd or a 5th. I think it was a 3rd place, maybe a 5th place finish a couple years ago in Memphis at the Fantasy Golf World Championship. So good for him. And obviously since then, he's won the Millie Maker with NASCAR. Just an awesome, awesome dude. So congrats to him. Nice to see. Again, lots of seats flying around on the last weekend as everybody's trying to get in. Seeing if I just saw anything else there. Shout out to Sean, said the course fit rankings continue to print. This will be out shortly. I got my rep is still on vacation, but he's still handling these things for me. So we will have the SHIPIT Nation Lister League out here shortly. I'll post that out on my X account when we do. Congrats to Nick. Took down a heavy irons. The $4,747 buy-in coming up for the Memorial is an awesome tournament, right? It's 230 something people, I believe. And it's like the best payout structure you'll find outside. And you're a milli maker, but with a better payout structure and not a milli up top. So definitely love to see that. So just lots of good stuff going on heading into this week. Now, Alex, we have a bit of a renovations to the course. We haven't seen it since 2019. I know you had some stuff there from before. Maybe while you're going through just what you know about this course, or maybe what you know and expect this week from this course, I'll pull up our guy EPAC Golf. I just want to show off something that he put out here today on X. But go ahead, you can start it off. Just anything you do know about the course from past, present, or what you're expecting this week coming up.
Yeah, I can tell you that our course fit model from 2019 only was huge on around the green play. Basically, short game was by far the most predictive aspect of the game. It's what translated the most to success. And you and I talked about it a little bit. Like you don't expect that sort of thing on a birdie course. 22 under one now. Rory won at 22 under, running away from everybody.
Yeah.
But basically, you think of around the green play as what's needed when it's difficult and guys need it to save par. But then there are events like Kapalua, like Craig Ranch, where short game actually ends up being really predictive in terms of who's going to make birdies on those short par fours, on the par fives, things of that nature. So it seems like we've got one of those again this year.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case. I mean, we'll look at it here in a second. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I want you guys to check it out, though. But shout out, friend Eric Patterson, EPAT Golf on X. Go follow him. Canadian dude, great guy. He says, enjoy sickos. Here's a hole-by-hole look using GPS screenshots to show the pre-renovation and the post. I mean, I'm going to have to check this out tonight. I'll be honest, I'm not getting to this one lately. I won't post the, thanks for coming out, sorry, but I'm not reading all that shit. But this is going to be good stuff. I just need the time to get to it, and I haven't got to yet. But I do always like to skip ahead, as most do with these threads. So just a note at the bottom, I thought this was really interesting. He put just his favorite comp courses: Oakdale, St. George's, TPC River Highlands, Sedgefield. You gave a couple more ideas as well that I think will still hold true, because when you go to his first key takeaways point, it says par threes are by far the toughest holes in the course. The changes are fantastic, but more for member play than to test the PGA Tour pros. And he thinks the 2019 data will still hold. That's in his opinion. Can certainly bomb it as long and straight, plays anywhere, but short hitters have a chance to contend. Chipping around these small greens will be trickier this year than in 2019, which would make it that much more important, right? Being able to have that skill set in the bag. You can talk more on that, Alex. And then most of the trouble off the tee is around 290 to 300. So if you've got that carry distance of 300 plus, Rory McIlroy and many others in this field, you can talk about that too. Anything here that you see just from his key takeaways that would stand out to you? And I think the around the green stuff just hits even harder at this point.
Yeah, I really like that last one. The note that most of the trouble's 290 to 300, because we don't see a ton of signal here on driving distance. Now, both distance and accuracy were actually slightly less predictive than usual back in 2019. But remember, that's an on average thing. So you can still get those like tier breaks where you might be longer than most, but if you can't carry it 300 plus, it doesn't really help you. But if you can carry it 320, like Rory, now all of a sudden you get that full benefit. So it can be true that extra distance is super helpful.
Yeah, and we'll talk on that when we get to the tiers in a minute, but I do think I'm going to have another conversation piece when we get to Rory, and I had it last week about Scotty. Remember, Scotty has to win to be up top. They say, I know people will still get on me about, but he came T2. Go look at the scoring and the math. Scotty could have came 10th and would have still scored like 91 points. It's just a separation of those 13 points or whatever from 104 down to that, or 103 down to 90, he still would have crushed. It's not how it works. It's a different type of game. You have to understand it from that level. I think everyone knows it, but it's going to be similar conversation when we get to Rory this week. Real quick, I'll just share this. Just a bunch of those that had big weeks that we did post out or see. Golf and Goof put out here, big week 33. Doesn't matter your bankroll, right? And like you said, whether it's SHIPIT Nation, FTN, combining the two of them together, whatever you might do, we're not us versus the world. You can get other access, other data sites, other whatever you want to use. It's just to show it off. We'll note we had a huge NASCAR week as well, which is nice because I know other sites, they do charge additional for just NASCAR only packages. We include it with our all access membership, and Rum Runners won over 20K off of $80. Founding family member, shout out to Chad, goes by Tavery01. He had the $6,000 FRWC seat and then won 4K in cash as well. So a big week for him. Scooter McGavin was that 18 to 6,300 in there. 100, you look here, round 4, $2,000. You said you won almost $4,000, Alex. Big week for you. Chris had his first ever GPP takedown, shipped 6K in the birdie. So love to see that. Just lots of good stuff going on over at the Nation. Skip the heavy marketing stuff today, but if you guys do want to get in, it's very simple. Go to the site, go to Join the Nation. I think right now the best thing to do is just get in on the PGA action. Like, you get in now, having a lot of great success in those streets. And then if you want to upgrade, you can always prorate and get it changed later. You don't lose anything on that. So $39 gets you in and gets you everything you see here, the whole breakdown for Showdown, all the stuff. The Stone, another great tool that we have that's not out there that you won't see at every other site. The Course Fit rankings that we already talked about that had a huge week. And then you can get it on the action that way. You'll get this event, the Memorial, the US Open. Like, now is a really good time to join. This works out to just over $1 a day. You want about $5 per event, or around $24 a month, less than $1 a day. Just join the annual, get in and do that now. And then if you want all access, just let me know or get in there, but definitely make sure you get into the Discord. All right, let's get to it, Alex, here. Let's go to the pricing. The only thing I know is Rory up top, because I saw that already, and then I started seeing other names. But give me your take on this real quick, because the other thing that I always just quickly cheat to is that is there a 5K range or isn't there? I think that's important at this point of the season. We're not going to go, see who all the names are there, but just to pull it up quickly and say, this was the take again last week. Like I said last week, Scotty was the wrong price still, because there was the gap of the other guys. And I get that it was going to be 35 to 40%, end up being even higher. So I understand that too. But the challenge was the guys behind him were not certified killers. You could easily fit 2 of them and still get away with it if you thought they were certified killers that were going to climb up the board. And he didn't have to win. There was just so many of those mid-tier guys that could have found their way to the top of the leaderboard that still would have required you to spend salary, or likely people do spend salary, where Scotty would have still fit in. And when you add the 5K range, it allows DraftKings just to throw everybody down there that used to be in the 6K range, which therefore boosts the value of the 6K range. And mind you, a $5,800 winner with Davis Riley. Don't expect that every week, but still just showed it again. Like I said, Scotty could have came 10th and still would have put up over 90 points with 2 bogey-free rounds, a bunch of birdies, not many bogeys. I mean, Sunday was terrible for him, and it cost me some too, but still great week. Just saying, like, it was a bad week for Scotty to come, and he still comes T2. It's just insanity. So give me your thoughts on that, and then how it applies when we talk about this 10.1K and up range from Lowry to Rory McIlroy at 12-1.
Yeah, I'd almost go as far as to say that we've reached a point, at least with Scotty's price each week, where the decision of whether or not to play Scotty is as much about who is in the 5 and 6K range as it is about how well you think Scotty's going to do. Because I didn't play Scotty this past week, even though we had him project, I think it was like a 63% chance of a top 5, which is just completely absurd, 34% chance to win. I didn't play him because I didn't like the cheap options, but I don't think Rory is quite that high where the decision of whether or not to play Rory depends on who's available in the 5 and 6K range. But I will say there are a bunch of names here that I do think are really intriguing. I mean, Thigala's been my guy like every single week that he tees it up, 10-5. Adam Scott, 9,000. Keith Mitchell, 87. 2 other guys that just played this past week. Mitchell's Sunday really killed me. But other than that, like, he was great. And Adam Scott played an awesome week. So lots of ways I think you can approach the top of this board this week.
And we've seen the RBC Canadian Open, other courses, mind you, but just have some great events where it is really a cream rises to the top. It is these guys at the top that you see do it. So you could see, even that year Rory won recently, what was it that year with Justin Thomas, Finau, Lowry, all those guys were up top. It was an awesome finish. And I think Rory ended up taking out JT. Finau fell back a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a lot of guys up there. And I believe like that's the same type of scenario. Anybody could have got that win from Rory because the names were capable of doing so. And here, maybe we see the same. I love that take you had, though, and the way you worded it of it's not about what you actually think Scotty's going to do. I mean, right now we think he's going to win every tournament and try and fade this guy for whatever reason. But the point would be, it also is more about what makes him work and how many scenarios would be there that even if he didn't come top 5, could he still end up being in the mix? And that's what I saw last week, and then he ends up having a pretty bad Scotty week, but still good enough to be T2. That just tells you everything you need to know. So let's talk about Rory here. Rory down to Lowry, and then what do you think Theegala puts it? What do you think he carries it off the tee? He puts it out there, doesn't he?
Yeah, I want to say he's close to 300. It's weird with him because he goes to this like stinger type drive so often that if you go and just look at his carry numbers, you're not going to see how far he can carry the ball, because if he needs to add loft to it and carry it, he can. So I always kind of default to ball speed as the best indicator, and he's got very solid ball speed.
Yeah, so sometimes he's carrying it 300 this way, so it doesn't let you go. And they measure it out this way. You're like, oh, it's actually 260, but it's 300 that way, because he can definitely be a little bit wide, like off the tee, have some issues. But I think in general, he's a good discount here from Rory. So any thoughts on Fleetwood, Lowry, more on Theegala, and then just overall thoughts on Rory here at 12-1? Obviously suits the course quite well. Won it back in 2019. Doesn't sound like the changes will affect him, at least. So how do you think, on a first look show, you think about handling a guy like Rory? And do you think his ownership could exceed Scotty's from last week, where it just becomes that same thing again and people just roll it out there?
I'd be shocked if it does. We have seen Rory as like the huge chalk already this year at PGA National. So it's not like it can't happen. But, man, I think everybody knows that Scotty's in his own tier right now.
Yeah.
And particularly from a floor perspective, right? Like Rory's going to have some events where you really are kind of disappointed with him. You just mentioned it. Like Scotty had a down week this past week, and he still finished his T2. So I don't think we're going to see Scotty type ownership on Rory, but it could get up there.
Yeah, I agree. So any thoughts on Lowry, Fleetwood quick? I know we talked about the top two guys. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, when I look at Theegala, Fleetwood, and Lowry, I think only one of them has the win equity and the upside to really challenge Rory up there. So if I'm paying $10,000, it's either Theegala or Rory.
Yeah, I think the one thing people will look at, maybe, again, we'll see by the end of the week how things come around, but I think Lowry finished second, right, to McIlroy back in 2019. So maybe that's a thought that people have, but I definitely agree with you on everything else up top. So let's move on. Let's go to this 9K range. We've got, what do we got here? We got Noren down to Adam Scott. And you mentioned Adam Scott. I know he's out there grinding right now, right? He's got to get back, I think, to the top 60. I think I saw everything on it there last week they were mentioning about. So he's out there trying to do his thing. But what are you thinking here in this 9K range? He ended up finishing 12th last week, but he's putting in the work right now to try and get his ranking back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, it seems to me like both the 9K and the 8K ranges are kind of full of guys who are overpriced. So finding the guys who are just the right price, then you also kind of have to hope that they end up being under-owned too. Like Adam Scott, Keith Mitchell, I think those guys I mentioned before are probably the most likely that I would play in this range. It seems like Cam Young, Corey Connors, Burns. I don't know why Mav McNeely is 9,200. He'll probably be lower owned, but yeah, all these guys I think are either overpriced or they have a very good chance of being over-owned. So, we mentioned like the fact that sometimes the decision for Scotty isn't about whether or not you think Scotty's going to do well. It's about who's available down below. It can also be about how great are the plays in these 8 to 9K ranges, because if I don't want to play anyone in this range, okay, now I'm much more likely to go up to play Rory.
Yeah, I think that's another great point. Just because it's not even just the top and the bottom, it's what's in the middle. And this is sort of the meat and potatoes of it, is this 99 down to 8K range where we've got 14 guys here. And it's hard to, besides the guys you always see, like, Corey Connors, Aaron Rye, like we can talk about them. They always pop into the mix and always get some ownership. But for the most part, you're not going to see them go out and win a lot of tournaments or anything like that, right? You're just counting on them to come through as a value play. But now when they're priced 8,500 and above, they're above your average. Some of these guys into the, Corey Connors, 9,500, McNeely, 9,200. Great Sunday round, but coming off a $7,700 price tag to immediately see 9,200, it's quite the shock. So interesting range here. Anybody just, or is there a couple guys that stand out to you that you'd see early on that you would think about if it wasn't like McIlroy, Theegala, those guys up top? Anybody in this 9K that stands out heavy?
I will always mention the fact that Cam Young is amongst the guys who's most likely to outproduce his actual leaderboard position with his DraftKings points just because of the amount of birdies and eagles he makes. Now, he hasn't been quite as good in that department this year as he's been in past seasons, but that still makes him a bit of an intriguing option anytime he's teeing it up, especially if he ends up being on the lower owned side.
Yeah, and it's every tournament's different, but just you can see here, some of these like 70-point performances are with really bad results, right? It's because you're mixing in eagles, there's streaks, there's more birdies than others, things like that. And people do. That's why I hinted at that earlier. Like, you really got to remember the game that we're playing. It's a scoring game. Fantasy points matter. So even with Scotty, it was like 2 spike rounds and one was a 67. The 63 mattered the most. But that's why, like I said, even if people say, yeah, but he did come T2, it's like he almost won. Sure, that is the 20 points built in for a second place, but I think it's still 7 points for 10th. So it's like you could have docked him 13. He still would have had 91 and just crushed considering all the guys around. Like Sung Jae Im came T9 last week with like 70 points. This guy would have been 10th and still had 91 if you just take that off the top.
The Wells Fargo was a fantastic example of that with Cam. He made 20 birdies. Rory made 21 birdies and eagles combined. So Rory won by 1 million and made one more birdie or eagle than Cam, because Cam had 5 doubles. So 5 doubles or worse. So that's just the difference. But scoring wise, that means that what did Cam finish? 34th. So he was probably like between 15th and 20th in DraftKings points there.
Yeah, he really did score well. I mean, he had 2 more birdies, but he didn't have the eagles. Rory had the eagles that week. That matters. The all 4 under 70, that adds up. But like, this is what people also don't look at, I think, enough, is like 71, 69, 71. But the only thing that stands out is the 76. Like, oh, this guy sucks. It's like, well, it was 2 strokes here, 2 strokes here from 3 straight 69s. And if he just doesn't have, and I know ifs and buts and all that, but my point being, I do think it's something that people should look at a little bit more. I was trying to see how my guy's been doing. I'm always an advocate for my guy here, and same type of setup. I mean, it's not the worst, but again, 2 strokes and you add another 5 points to that, plus the birdies that go with it. You're talking almost 80, but typically you see it like T30 still gets 100 points with 17 birdies and 2 eagles, 14 and an eagle, 13 and an eagle. The guy, 19 birdies. Like, these are tough tracks too. This is the Players Championship, the Masters, 14 birdies. I mean, it played easier this year, but still. My point is, with Adam Scott, while I was like him and, whatever, he's 9K. It's hopefully the fact that he's not 8,900 in Best Buy pricing makes it so people that don't like him, maybe they still will, but there is Aaron Rye, Mitchell, Tom Kim, some of those guys we'll get to in a second down here. Any quick Corey Connors thoughts? I'm obviously biased when it comes to him because of the Canadian factor, but any thoughts on him coming out and pulling a Nick Taylor and getting the job done, or do you think it would more likely be somebody else? I mean, these are good results for a signature event and a major, right? That's, I think people discount this too. Oh, he's always the guy that just gets you a top 30 or a top 40. Yeah, he's playing in the hardest, strongest fields at the top courses and putting up these results where, again, just couple strokes here, couple strokes there, still putting up the points. Any thoughts on Corey Connors as the Canadian guy this week?
As always, the ball striking has been there. The putter has not. And everyone always talks about how the putter doesn't match the ball striking. They always overlook the fact that his around the green play is even more of a weakness than his putting. So I'm probably going to stay away from Connors this week, but it's not because of the putter. It's because of what we think is going to be a pretty high around the green signal week. And Connors just falls short there. But man, his iron play has been so spectacular that if he's in contention, I'm not going to be surprised in the slightest.
Yeah, you don't need around the green play if you just stick it to 6 feet every time. Then you just need a putter. But
that's what we were talking about a little bit this week, right? Where this time the around the green play can be more because you're hitting 3-wood into a par 5 and you're purposely putting it in the greenside bunker because you know that's an easy up and down, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a different around the green signal than most weeks, but your point is always true. Sometimes you can just hit the ball so well that you don't need the around the green. In fact, maybe it means that he's hitting that 3-wood to 20 feet and 2 putting. So
yeah, it can definitely work that way. I think it's also, I know it's a first look for a classic slate show, but I think it's something that comes up in Showdown as well. When you're playing PGA DFS Showdown, it's like people are like, oh, but his around the green was so bad in round 2. Like, that's what killed him. Who cares in round 3? If that I mean, you're dead if that happens in round 3 anyway. You're not really worried about that. You want the ball striking. to take care of business. So it's like, that's why I can ignore that in something like a showdown slate. On a main, you're kind of considering it a little bit more of who's going to be able to make it through, battle, make the cut, and then hopefully find a spike round or two over the weekend and get into the action for you. So other guy, I guess, that would stand out maybe a little is Sam Burns. I just don't know. He was good right after having the kid, and then it kind of fell apart the next week. So it's tough to say, but if I could say somebody down here that you could say is kind of like sort of the right price, probably still not. He's probably still overpriced, but I'm just saying, like, at least I could see the guy has win equity on the PGA Tour. He wins more than most of the guys around him here. So, or has. It's just whether or not he can show back up. So don't hate going to someone like him. Let's keep it moving. Let's go to this 8K range. We got Rye down to Nick Taylor, last year's winner. Obviously an emphatic win. Took it away from Tommy Ladd, but great to see a Canadian get back into the winner's circle, and just a crazy, crazy finish to get it done the way he did. But, oh man, I hope that course, just a quick side note, that was painful. That play, just watching them replay this hole, and they kept playing it the same way over and over, and the backstopping that was allowed, and just everything. I just never want to see that again. That just, it reminds you. Luckily, an amazing finish. The Canadian got the job done. Shout out Nick Taylor, but hard to watch that one and think and remind myself of it back in my head. Thoughts on this 8K range, Alex? Any thoughts extra there?
Yeah, Mitchell's the one who stands out, as I mentioned. Beyond that, there are a couple guys who I expect to be really low owned. Like, well, maybe they won't be, but Mac Hughes at 83, anytime around the green spikes, I have interest there. He had a series of very good events in a row, so he was actually fairly popular as one of the cheapest options at the Wells Fargo. But then you go to the PGA Championship, he misses the cut, so maybe his ownership will drop again, in which case I'd be interested in Hughes. I think Akshay and Nick Taylor are probably going to be the more popular guys, and I kind of think they deserve that ownership. I don't know what you're thinking there. Yeah,
I think it's going to happen no matter what. Akshay continues with his sort of MO now of like, it's boom or bust. Again, it's so funny though. Like, these are nothing. Like 73, 72, he didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't make the cut. And it's, a few strokes here, a few strokes there. People are like, oh, you missed the cut though. He's not in good form. 73, 70, like at a PGA championship. These are pretty standard scores out there. And again, you're not playing them for that. You're playing them for these spikes, including the win, but like 17th, 11th, 1st, 35th, 18th, and 35th. Typically at a course like this, that's at the Masters. At a course like this, that would come with scoring. So can shake that one off a little bit, but I think it's fine. Yeah, to your point there, I think, Aaron Rye will still get some love because two things. One, people love him. Two, the best buy pricing of 8,900. And three, okay form coming in. I guess it would be a fourth then that I was going to try and get to, was that definitely known more for his around the green play. You think back to when he won, this is way back now, winning the Scottish Open, but just being able to miss, clip it up tight. He does it all the time. The problem with him is he puts everything from around the green to 4 feet, and then you do have to sweat the 4 foot. It's like every single time, and he misses a lot of them. So just a note on him, but I like your Mitchell call. I like, some of the bottom range stuff. Shout out to our guy, Rin. He's a huge EVR fan. He pops up here, says, finally gets his respect. Let's go. What's he been doing? This is nuts, though. It is pretty crazy. Look at this. T53 at the PGA Championship, but pops a 14 birdies and an eagle for almost 70 points. Myrtle Beach, he was the huge favorite there, did not get the job done. But, man, you know this better than anyone. That's golf. Rough Sunday after, 3 strong rounds. Not rough. It's a 70. I mean, literally, it's a 70. But at that course, the way it's playing, obviously not going to fully get the job done. But T33 for 80 and a half. I mean, this guy can put up the points for sure. Any quick thoughts on EVR, and then we'll move on to the 7K range?
No, I just agree with the idea that he's just a great scorer. And another guy that you can throw in the group with Cam Young, Keith Mitchell, just almost always going to outproduce his real life leaderboard position on the DraftKings board.
Yeah, shout out to Go Collect. Appreciate it. If you guys are watching live, do us a favor, smash that like, subscribe to the channel. We are on the drive for 7K. So when we get to 7,000, we'll be giving away an annual PGA membership, $299 value. We're getting close. Now I think we're just over 6,700. So make sure to subscribe for the channel. Appreciate that. If you are watching on replay, I know many of you out celebrating, having fun today. Please, hopefully be safe. If you're watching this in the evening, hopefully you were safe. But just in general, make sure if you're watching, always help us out. Hit that like button, supports the channel, helps us out. We always say it. We're going to keep going, keep growing. That's part of it. So help us out there. Back to the 7K range here. Mark Hubbard is 7,900. And I think he always gets a little bit of love. I know last week sort of fell off. It was 71, 71, 71, and then a 74, but he was well loved going into the week. I saw round 4 showdown. A lot of people liked Davis Thompson, so maybe that love continues. Taylor Pendrith, I mean, won recently, and then on top of it, Canadian guy, so maybe people go there. And then there's a lot of guys that you can just take a risk on. Adam Svensson maybe gets a bit popular, couple good, making cuts like crazy, solid enough finishes, but he's kind of the opposite effect, Alex. Like, where is the upside with this guy? It's a made cut, but where is the upside? I guess you need made cuts, so it's helpful, but he's almost always seemingly going to be your sixth man going in and out of how things shake out on the tournament if you get a 6-6.
Yeah, I agree with that. The two that come to my mind here in this range, number one, Daniel Berger. A couple of years ago, if we saw 7,700 in a field like this, we'd be jumping all over it. Now, we haven't seen anywhere near that version of Berger yet this year, but he's starting to put some solid rounds together. He's driving the ball well again. His iron play has been pretty consistent in the last 3 events. The short game hasn't been there, so that's, again, the hang-up for me, but there's a chance that you're getting somebody who's rounding back into that like 9K form at 7,700. So that's a little bit intriguing. And then not many guys are going to be better course fits in our model than Ben Griffin this week, coming off of 2 bad weeks. So again, maybe you get an ownership discount because of that, but he was really solid before that. And another guy who scores extremely well. Had 4 consecutive events with 19 plus birdies for a little while there. Some easier courses, of course, but this is going to be a fairly easy course as well. So some interest there. Obviously, the form isn't great. And actually, this past week, he was a pretty good course fit and didn't do well. So I always love to find guys who, they haven't played that well, but they haven't fit the course for some time. And then they all of a sudden get to a golf course that should fit their skill set. It's not exactly that case with Ben Griffin, even though this one does fit him well.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too, just because you look at it for the setup here, like again, 71, 72, like it's not that bad. It's the way it goes, right? That's golf. And even go back to the PGA Championship, it was a rough start, popped to 65 in round 2, probably missed the cut. I forget what it was there. I think it was 4 over or 3. It was definitely up there, I'm pretty sure, at the PGA Championship, popping to 65 after a 73. I know that first round was really easy, so maybe I'm off on my numbers, but again, to your point, you go back before that, even if you include that round, it's like 65s, all under 70s, all under 70s, only 1 over 70, a couple 69s, some 68s. This guy can really put it out there. So, as far as scores go, put him up there, I should say. 7,500, he's fine. I think Kevin Yu is another guy that was popping a little bit last week, had a good Myrtle Beach, and then not so great Charles Schwab, but just a note, he's there. Hogard, the chat was mentioning, I think he's going to be an interesting play this week. We'll probably have more on him when we get to the Wednesday show, but someone talked about it here and said, the talent just has to put it all together. Some of these numbers are tougher to see. He had a 77 in round 2. He's had some bigger rounds out there, but anybody in this lower 7K range that stands out for you on this first look? Does seem to be a smaller 7K range again. I'm going to double check it while you talk about it.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Bo Hostler is a name that, again, short game comes up, I think of Bo Hostler, another guy coming off of 2 pretty bad performances in a row. So it's one of those things where you just have to wait and see what ownership is like, right? If the whole field is scared of those 2 bad events, okay, I'm in. If the field isn't scared of them and there's a chance that he's just going to continue to play poorly, okay, now I'll side with the leverage side and fade that instead. But I think the theme in this area is like there are a lot of guys who I think are going to project pretty well, who have played poorly in their last couple starts. So there's a chance we're going to get some really nice ownership discounts.
Yeah, and it was really tough to say. I know we saw this at least last week, a couple weeks ago too, like where this range, well, you have the condensed ownership on 1 or 2 guys, then there's like that bubble or that pocket of guys that everyone just spreads out completely on because everybody wants there's a Gim person out there that wants Gim. There's a Svensson person, the Canadians that want him here. Oh, but Fox would be the pivot, so I'll go to him. And they all end up in that 8 to 12 range, and you can do whatever you want. And then, there's not many that fall to like a 2% or something. Yeah. This week, I could see that's more in the upper 6K range where you could see guys get like no ownership, maybe Olesen or something like that. You see not get a lot of love, but there is guys in here that you can play. The chat asked about Davis Riley going back to back. Do you have any takes on DFS back-to-back or like just golf in general, like, you know, what the mindset is coming off of it. Because I remember way back when there was like a little bit of a study done. This is probably outdated now, but was like golfers that get cheaper after a win typically still did well. Like it was not anything, again, they don't know their price. It had nothing to do with that. It was just the fact that at least they still played okay enough to pay off said price tag. In this case, we got the opposite here. He's going from 5,800 up to 7,200. Any takes on just what it's like winning and then coming back out, and then on top of it, how it relates to DFS and just the mindset of people playing DFS?
Winning definitely takes a lot more mental energy than anything else. So there is something behind the idea of, oh, I don't want to play somebody coming off of a win, but you also have to recognize like what state the player's in terms of his career. Davis Riley isn't thinking like, oh my God, my life has changed. I just accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish in golf. He wants to continue to get better. He wants to continue to, have this kind of success in larger, bigger events, stronger fields, that sort of thing. So I would almost say sometimes there's like a delayed effect too, where he's going to show up next week. And if he starts well, he's going to be able to continue to ride that momentum, that wave of success, and he might be able to contend again. If, on the other hand, he starts poorly, it's going to be a little bit tougher for him to find, the mental energy to scrape a made cut through. Whereas in a regular week, if you start poorly on Thursday, it's pretty easy to battle your ass off on Friday to try to make that cut. So it's a variable that does matter a little bit, but I do tend to think that people overestimate it.
Yeah, I think he's going to fall in sort of middle of the road. I don't think he's going to get a ton of ownership because off a win, people usually don't like to go there. But I think, to your point, it's a good call out where it's almost worth it for the risk versus reward. You just, I mean, we talked about earlier with like Akshay, Keith Mitchell, some of those guys we mentioned where we know they're boom bust, but we want some of that into our build. Do you have anything you do when you're building and doing roster construction that sort of limits any of that, where it's like, okay, I don't want 3 or 4 of these guys that have the chance to explode and blow up my lineup, but I want to take on a little more risk because it's a large field versus dialing that back in for smaller fields? Anything on roster construction there that you can relate back to that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. So one thing that we do is we estimate both round to round standard deviation and event to event standard deviation, which it turns like you might think, oh, they're both just measures of volatility and golfers are either volatile or they're not. It's not the case. Some guys are really volatile event to event, but you kind of know what they're going to be like all week once you see how they play Thursday and Friday. Other guys, it's like every single day. It could just be anything. Riley is, by the way, one of the guys who's just, his volatility is off the charts. So, that kind of spike that we just saw last week, technically, hypothetically, it could happen anywhere for him. So that was, again, really cool to see from him that he finally, took that high event to event standard deviation and did something with it. Because that's the great side of being volatile, is you get those great ceiling performances. But to your original question, like, I think number one, our GPP scores kind of create that balance automatically, because it's not just going to point to guys who are really volatile. It's also going to point to guys who have the really nice floor and are underowned because of their floor. But you can also just do that manually by saying, like, all right, I can see how volatile each guy is. So I want to have a nice balance of maybe I'll have 3 guys who are above average standard deviation, 3 guys who are below average standard deviation, things of that nature. I do think it's a pretty solid way to build lineups. Yeah,
just like you said, I can easily see the Davis Riley situation. He comes out hot and then just rides that adrenaline and momentum off the win from the previous week and just feeling it and keeps going. Obviously, a guy that was quite touted. I mean, obviously a guy that, more people know some about from like Tony Romo stories and golfing in Texas and things like that. But I mean, this was huge. And to take down the world number 1 when he's been super hot, like that is the kind of point here that's got to feel good, not just breaking free from it was only a team win with Nick Hardy to now saying it's an individual win, but also the way it happened. And the final group that he was in was him and Scotty. So, I mean, very incredible stuff for a guy like him to go out and get the job done, get the monkey off his back for the individual win when it comes to that. So love to see it. Shout out to my guy, Dwayne. Really appreciate it, man. As always going to keep out here grinding just like you, man. Trying to keep up with my guy, Dwayne, but shout out to him. Maybe try and get Dwayne in on the action a little when we get to the NFL season. I'd love to do some of those review shows with him. So he's in the Discord, always out there supporting, gave away a bunch of money back at the PGA Championship. So shout out to Dwayne. Let's keep it moving, Alex, here. Got to talk about this upper range. Last year's Rookie of the Year, Eric Cole, man, he fits that mold, I guess, of the other stuff. But where has this guy been? Because going to be a decision this week, I think, for some cut, but it was 72, 71, 72, 71. Not much crazy before that, but a little bit tougher fields, tougher courses, all of that. Do you think this could set up well for Eric Cole? And then who are some of the other guys sort of 6,500 up to 6,900 that you might have in mind?
Cole was the first guy that I was going to bring up down here because, man, like the type of guys that I've brought up so far, like these guys who haven't played great in their last few starts, but you know that the talent is there and the fit is there. Eric Cole is that, but on steroids. His form has been atrocious. And yet, if you look back to more his long-term form, my God, this is a fantastic setup for him. He could be one of the best plays on the slate in that regard. But I don't know if I can go here because he's just been so bad, and he's been so bad in every aspect of the game, right? It's not like he just needs to turn around his iron play or he just needs to get the putter going again. It's every part of his game right now is slumping. So it's going to be that much tougher for him to get back in form. Kind of the flip side of that is Sunghyun Kim, 6,800. He popped for us. He was one of our best course fit specialists at the Byron Nelson. He ends up finishing fourth. It was a big reason why we had takedowns that week. And since then, you know, he hasn't had like those huge finishes. In fact, he's been near the bottom of guys who make the cut. But at least on Thursdays and Fridays, he's played some really solid golf. And this is now getting back to a course that fits him as best as any course has since the Byron Nelson. He's one of the guys who's by far the most sensitive to course fit because if you look at his strokes game profile, like he's long off the tee, he's great around the greens, and every other aspect of his game is questionable at best. So in that regard, this week could be really good for him. 6,800, I think he's going to be worth a shot. And hopefully his game just really trends in the right direction. You mentioned like looking at guys who, you know, maybe they just had that one round that held them back. Well, this past week at the Charles Schwab, 66, 71, 69, and then just struggled mightily in the win with a 79 coming in the final round. So without that, he'd have a much better finish. His numbers would look better. I do think his whole game is kind of trending in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's where, you know, we're tying it all together now, bringing it full circle. But some of the stuff, you just don't know what's going on with their golf game. And the guys like, you know, SH Kim, I liked him last week. That 79 on Sunday sucked, but it was tough for many golfers on Sunday. A guy like Eric Cole, you don't know what he's working on right now or what it's going to be, but sometimes getting back to a course that does really suit you is what snaps you out of it and gets you back on track. I mean, if you think someone's going to get back on track, you can't just fade them forever. So that's kind of that part. And then even going back earlier, like last week, people say, oh, the course fit rankings, my ass. Like, I don't know how you could trust Riley, this, that, and the other. It's like, again, it only takes a week of turn. He was with the new coach. He did show a little bit of signs of life. He said later, which no one knew this, of course, but he said he was battling a bit of injury at the start of the season, but you still knew the talent was there. You are taking a risk when you're playing these guys for sure, but that's part of it. And sometimes it's a course like this to snap them out of it. And I just think that's, back to your Ben Griffin call earlier, or Hostler, we looked at, they shot 72, 71. They weren't broken. They didn't shoot 88, 80 and like are contemplating should they continue or go take a couple weeks off. They just didn't play good golf for the 2 rounds that you need to make the cut. Therefore, when everyone says someone sucks, well, he hasn't done shit lately. He missed 2 cuts. Okay, what did he do before that? He crushed in the Ben Griffin scenario. It's like, you have to just give some breaks on those things and take more into consideration than some of that other stuff. And the chat's talking about my guy, man. Mayo calls him Mark Messier back in the hockey days, those that know Mark Messier. But Mac Meisner, man, he just went out last week and did his thing. He was an awesome value play. I liked him and SH Kim quite a bit. Obviously, the course straight rankings liked Riley. So in those builds, I didn't quite get all of it together to get to the full top, but a great week nonetheless using some of those guys. My dad's guy, Kevin Tway, is here in the mix. He's going to be popular this week, I think, somehow, just because another good week, even with the 75 on Sunday, really solid week otherwise with a spike round in there. We know he could put it out there, the 9th, the 3rd, some of this stuff, T43 at the Wells Fargo, which is a signature event. Like, I think for sure he's going to get a little bit of love, at least at 6,700. We'll have to wait and see, but I think I could see him getting it there. Chan Kim, I feel like as a guy, again, the cut 73 and a 70. It's not like the worst, but 14th at the Texas Open, T6. Byron Nelson again. Oh, but he missed the cuts. 73-70 and a 66-72. Like, this sucks for a guy to go out and shoot a 66 and then follow it up with a 72 to probably, I think that week was 5 under. So missed the cut on the number. Like, that's got to feel brutal. So we'll look at that. I mean, we're not going to go into all these guys, but there's other ones here in the 6K range. The chat's talking about Troy Merritt. What is Troy Merritt's price this week? He was the flow chart. I don't even know. Have we got to Troy Merritt yet? Nick Hardy maybe gets inspired by his former Zurich Classic partner win with Davis Riley from the previous week. I mean, he's not doing much himself, but again, there's a 66 in there. No big numbers. These are just big for those tournaments, but like a 25th made the cut last week. I mean, these guys can spike. I will say this, for an old guy that's been popping a little bit lately, a decent week from Zach Johnson for a T45. Before that was T20. I mean, he's been doing a little bit more lately. Ches Reavie popped a little bit, I saw, and it's, again, nothing seriously bad within here. Like, his worst round is what? A 73 last week twice. Before that, there was nothing worse than a 71. Like, these guys are playing fine golf. Is there anybody there else in the 6K you want to talk to? If not, let's do a quick run through of maybe anybody you see that pops in the 5K range.
There's not really anyone else in the 6. The guy in the 5 is somebody that Chad already mentioned. It's Troy Merritt, 5,800. And he was another guy who really popped for us as a course fit specialist with Byron Nelson. Like, your course fit specialists just popped like crazy this past week with Riley, Zach Johnson, those guys. Our version of that was the Byron Nelson. We had the SH Kim 4th place finish. We had Troy Merritt get into the top 10. And we mentioned it earlier. This is another course like at the Byron Nelson that you're seeing this spike in around the green signal, even though it's going to be a birdie fest. So definitely a spot that I'd be interested in going back to Merritt for.
Yeah, you know the Merritt flow chart. I talk about it sometimes, but it's, is Troy Merritt playing? Yes. Is he cheap? Yes. Is it a birdie fest? Likely in this case. And, then play Troy Merritt, and especially if the field's not that strong. And so at 5,800, I definitely think the way he's been playing too, get him into the mix. None of these 5K guys, by the way, ever get love. Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's like it might get 5%, and then you still can make the argument, sure, that you take the 1% guy, but I don't know if you do. I think at that time, it's just like, honestly, it's not a head-to-head matchup we're talking about. Like, it's finish out your lineup with the guy you want to finish it out with. I think you're sort of taking your stands down here. T-Dunks has to be like Adam Svensson for cheaper. No upside whatsoever. There's some nice made cuts in there, but you just never see the full pop anymore. So tough to say there. I know Joel Damon was popping a little in round 4. It did not come to fruition, but people were playing him round 4 showdown. I saw some good stats on him. I kind of liked him there, but nothing, again, from upside perspective, but it only takes a week. I mean, back at the Players, T11, so maybe you could see something out of some of these guys, but I don't think I've got too much else down here. I'll do a quick run through on the other side. Callum Tarrant, I don't know what he's been up to. How much is he again?
I think Neesmith is another name that you could throw in down here.
What are you thinking on him? Yeah, talk about Neesmith for a second.
He's been somebody who he pretty much always projects fairly well for us. And, there was a stretch there where nothing was coming from that. And now 54th at Myrtle Beach, 24th at the Charles Schwab. And importantly, he's been having success again in the categories that we expect him to: iron play, around the green play. So this could be a decent fit for him as well.
Yeah, and same. We've been doing this all day, so I'll round it out on this. But like the 79-76, pretty bad. That's way back, the start of April now. We're getting almost close on June here, 2 months later, give or take. Since then, it's like nothing atrocious. Oh, but the only this, only that. He still put up almost 65 points in both of those at 5,700. That'll play very nicely coming off a T24 at the Schwab. And then even at the Byron Nelson, a 70 and a 69. That, though, tell you, which you know very well, how hard the game of golf is. Not much else is going to tell you. 70 and 69 for a 3 under. Nope, you're not seeing the weekend still. It doesn't matter. It's what everybody else has been doing. So I think beyond this, like Ross asked this good question, but again, you're just my answer to this always is the same. Like, you're trying to, been doing this here. If you like them, play them enough so that it actually matters. But typically, even if they pop, like look at last week, Riley got to go to the house with it at 1% or under sub 1% ownership. And the only reason you see a bunch of our community at the top, and we've got crossover between both of our communities, but the reason you see it is clearly because he was number 1 in the course fit rankings that people just trust and roll out. And I will say, that'd be my final note. and then I'll let you talk about FTN and what you guys got going on. But the course fit rankings, it got brought up like, oh, you just play them every week. You won't get like, oh, this guy did bad in them still. Like everyone always looks for a negative around it. And I was just trying to say one thing. Like, I don't care either way. I use them clearly. I showed it off that I use exactly what we carry, and that turned into those 3 tickets. But my point would be you're looking for spike weeks in PGA DFS. Like you're going to lose. You can lose 12 weeks in a row, make no money, and then have 1 week and make it all back and a bunch more on top. That's typically how it goes for somebody playing, looking at the long term. These course fit rankings amongst the stone and the projections and other things. You guys have the GPP score. I'll let you talk more on FTN in a second, but just in general, find your resources, build your process up, stick with it. If you build in sets or whatever it might be, you can get around to some of these builds that you have these lineups. My point would be, you don't have to trust them or use them as the sort of one-way street. Like it's a piece of the puzzle. It's a piece of the process. But I've had spike weeks by just using the course fit rankings like 3 times already this year. And that's more than most are going to find, or even myself. I'm thrilled with that. And when I had my 9 previous weeks that sucked, boom, now yesterday happens and get it all back and more. A couple showdown runouts lately, things like that, where I don't mind just trusting some of the resources that you have, sticking to your process and being able to roll it out there, because you are literally just looking for those spike weeks. You're not going to win. I would rather win once out of every 13 to 15 weeks big, which most of you should, but maybe it doesn't get said enough, then I would just make profit every week, make $100 every week. Woo, profit, baby. No, that's not why we play the game. The name is SHIPIT Nation. We're trying to ship it, take it down, get the job done, win the most possible, and when you spike, make it happen for a lot of money. So any final thoughts on that, Alex? And then let the people know where to find you and what you guys have going on over at FTN.
I think it gets back to something you said earlier, where some like hypothetical DFS player could have been like, well, I can't trust Davis Riley this week. He hasn't done anything. It's not about trusting a player, right? It's about acknowledging the fact that he has the potential to do something that helps you ship the contest, get the takedown, etc. And so I always tell people, like, if someone asks in Discord, do you trust so-and-so tonight? Do you trust so-and-so this week? It's like, get that word out of your DFS vocabulary. Trust doesn't belong in what we're talking about when we're going for these takedowns. And the GPP scores are the exact same way, right? So you might look at the top 5 GPP scores. If 2 of them fail, it doesn't matter if the other 3 come through and help you get the takedown. So yeah, it's very similar idea for us. And then the other thing that I'd say is, we always talk behind closed doors, you and I, about how one thing that you guys don't offer that we do is prize picks. And so anyone listening who wants to get more involved with prize picks, whether it's PGA, MLB, NBA, our guy Zach is now crushing WNBA as well, which just helps us even more. Head on over to FTN, try us out. $250 for the whole year gets you the full FTN DFS subscription. So come check us out. Prize picks, PGA, whatever you want, we've got it.
Yeah, and they can find you on X as well. What's your handle over there?
At AlexBlicka1.
Yeah, check them out, guys. Definitely follow Alex. Appreciate you coming on again, as always, man. Definitely just love doing shows with you. Good little back and forth. Be able to find, we got some good chemistry already, but find different angles of approach in. Really helped us out. Hoop is off, but he'll be back on Wednesday with me on this channel, 2:30 Eastern, for the regular PGA show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great Memorial Day. If you're watching this on replay, do us a favor, smash that like, hit the subscribe to the channel so we can get to 7,000 and beyond and do more giveaways. Thank you again to Alex. Thanks to all for watching. I'm ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it.